right. Welcome back to my channel, Money Travel Grow. This channel is to help you get location and financial independence by first getting a job in digital marketing, your first job in digital marketing. Now, today's topic is going to be about how to become a social media manager. Now, before I get into this, I want you guys to like, share, and subscribe to this channel so that you can continue to get more and more content. So I can help you get your first job in digital marketing in a very short period of time. Also, head over to my Facebook page, Digital Marketing Career Starter, and become a member. I'm sharing a lot of great information over there that will help you become a digital marketer in no time. All right, so you read the title, How to Become a Social Media Manager. Before I want to get into that, I want to talk a little bit about what they do or what it is. Now, by definition, a social media manager is someone who manages various platforms on social media. Now, this could be Twitter, this could be Google, this could be, and when I say Google, I'm really talking about YouTube more than anything else, because there is a social component that is there. But mostly you're talking about Twitter, you're talking about Facebook, you're talking about Instagram, you're talking about TikTok, you're talking about Snapchat, and all those things. However, a lot of times when they're hiring you to do whatever channels that they're working with. Any of the ones I just mentioned or different ones. So you're managing these channels to ensure that your spending is minimized and your profit is maximized. It's the best way to sum it up. So what are you doing? Initially, you are launching campaigns, and you're launching campaigns by way of acquiring the different assets that you may be given, like the images as well as the copy. Now, sometimes you may have to write copy for that particular campaign. I know I do that right now in my current job, but that's something you may do. Or you may just be handed it. They may just give you that, and you just have to build the campaign and then eventually, launch the campaign. Once the campaign is launched, what you're going to do is you're going to monitor this campaign to see how the spending is going, to see, what's happening with the key performance indicators. And your key performance indicators are determined upon the type of campaign in which you are running. So, for example, let's say if you're doing a campaign with the objective to drive traffic to a website or landing page, and landing page and website are the same, by the way. Just want to make sure that you are using the right terminology in an interview. Some of the key performance indicators could be click-through rate, or CTR. It could be clicks, and it even could be impressions. And impressions, of course, are the amount of times that people are seeing that ad. It's really a vanity metric, but a lot of people judge their success of a campaign by it. One other thing I want to say, before you launch a campaign, a lot of times they're going to ask you to forecast, which basically means you're going to come up with numbers that you think that the campaign should reach or has potential to reach. And so that's what you're going to be sort of measured and judged by. So, for example, if you run let's say a 2-week campaign and you have a budget of $2,000, you may just, based on your forecast, you may say, we expect 100,000 impressions. We expect this many clicks. And in some cases, you may even go as far as say, we expect this many sales. It just depends. But one thing's for sure, you'll be able to predict how much money you're probably going to end up spending based on the target audience that you're trying to reach. All right, so after you do that, what you're going to basically end up doing is optimizing the campaign. So let's just say you feel like you're not getting enough clicks or you're not getting enough impressions. You may decide to change the image. You may decide to increase the budget or decrease the budget, just depends. You may decide to change the bidding of the campaign. and you may decide to change the copy. It just really depends on what you're seeing by monitoring this particular campaign. So once the campaign is over, then what you're going to do is you're going to um, give a report. So you're going to pull the metrics, pull the numbers, find out where these numbers fell in relationship to whatever your original forecast actually was. And then you're going to just talk about where you felt like the campaign succeeded and where you can improve upon, the next time. All right, so that's pretty much the gist of what a social media manager is going to do. And by the way, a social media manager is pretty much the same as a media buyer, a PPC specialist, or pay-per-click specialist. They all more or less do the same thing. It's the same thing. Just one is called tomato, the other one's called tomato. It's the same though. Once you do that, you're going to, of course, do a report, give it to your supervisor or whomever, or the clients or whoever you're supposed to give it to. And a lot of times they may ask you to simplify it and just talk to them in human terms. What does this actually mean? And that's the key. I think more than anything else, that's one of the reasons why people are hired to do this work, not just to drive sales or to drive and complete the particular objective that you are setting to achieve, but also to be able to explain it in very simple terms so that anyone will be able to get it, so they can make a business decision if they want to continue with maybe that same budget or continue in the direction in which they're going with their campaign. All right, so now you might be wondering, okay, it's great. I know what they're doing, Tawan. You've covered this in other videos. I get it, but I also got you. So how do you actually become a social media manager? I mean, what does it take to become a social media manager? Well, I think a couple of things. I think the first thing, if you don't have a lot of experience, you definitely want to have a good understanding of how this entire process works. What I just explained to you will not change for most jobs. Of course, some jobs may ask you to do a little bit more work in terms of, maybe writing copy or reviewing the materials, which you should do anyway. But these are the things that this is the very process that you're going to want to do. You should be able to explain that very well. Of course, certain specifics, especially with KPIs and things like that. You should be familiar with the terminology that they're going to ask you. They may ask you about a CRM. They may ask you about a CRT. They may ask you about a ROAS, which is ROAS, which stands for return on ad spend. These are the things you want to be familiar with, because when they talk to you in the interview, they're going to ask you these questions. And if you don't know what these questions are, or this terminology is rather, you're going to appear to be very lost, and they're going to probably pass upon you, because even though they may know that you don't have a lot of experience with this, they want you to have to be familiar at least with a lot of the terminology and how the process works. The other thing is that I would say you want to show excitement. John Maxwell said that when all things are equal, people do business with people they like. I think the same thing applies in a job interview. When you are in a job interview and they're looking to hire you, they want to hire people that they actually like, that they want to spend time with. Now, this is true. You may not be spending a lot of time when you're doing your projects, but you are in a fair share of meetings, and people want to be in meetings that they feel like with people that they like, but not only that, but people who actually have a level of competence. Think about it. If you've ever been a manager or if you've ever worked with a manager, the best thing you can do is to be less of a liability and more of an asset in a company. Because when you're more of an asset in the company, that is to say that you add more to the team, people want that. They want you to become a problem solver. But when you're someone who, let's say, is a liability, no one wants to work with a liability, because now you make my job tougher, because now I got to stop what I'm doing to put out the fires that you've created or to fix the problem that you've had. So personality definitely matters. I'm not saying you got to be bubbly and all this stuff. Of course, be yourself, but be likable. And I probably should do a video about how to be more likable in a job interview. One quick pro tip I want to get at is if you're in a job interview and you look at a person's background, assuming that they don't, because I know we do a lot of Zoom calls now when you're doing interviews, and you may not necessarily be privy to see their background, but let's just say that you see something in their background that you've maybe done or you can identify with. That is a good time to mention that in the little small talk. For example, the very first job I got in digital marketing, my supervisor had participated in a couple of triathlons as well as marathons. Now, I've ran marathons in the past, and so I brought that up and told him a little bit about some of the marathons that I had ran, and it turned out that we actually ran some of the same marathons, and so there was a connection that was there, and because of that connection, I think that really went a long way in helping my likability within the interview, as well as ultimately with the decision making in them giving me the job. So that's something that you should never overlook. Okay, what are some other things that you can do to become a social media manager, or what does it actually take? I think if you've ran some campaigns, that obviously helps, because they're going to ask you that question: what campaigns have you ran? And for you to say, no, I've never ran one, again, you want to make it an easy decision for them. Tell them that you've ran some campaigns. Obviously, you may not have a large budget, but at least go through the process. And then they're probably going to ask you a question such as, well, what did you learn from this campaign? You may say, I learned that I needed to optimize sooner. You may say that I learned that I needed to increase the budget in order to get the reach in which we wanted to achieve. You could say I needed to refine my targeting. You could say a number of things, but the key is they want to see that you've already done this. And again, it doesn't have to be a lot, but just something that you can say that you've done. Now, a good way to prove this is by using a portfolio, because if you submit a portfolio along with your resume, that already shows that you have the chops. Even if it is for a small amount of money, again, you're showing them effort, because again, none of us went to college for this. So most of us are coming to digital marketing from another type of profession. And so we don't have a lot with us, but the amount of effort that you're putting in to show something that you've done, I think is important. Within this portfolio, one of the things that you might want to consider is a spreadsheets. They're going to always ask you this question: how good are you with spreadsheets? So if you're fairly decent with Excel or Google spreadsheets, that's going to go a long way. And in particular, what do you call it? A pivot table. So learn how to make pivot tables. They don't take that long to learn. You can spend an hour learning and figure it out, and there you go. Show proof of a pivot table within the portfolio, and that also will give you some brownie points. I'd say the other thing would be just, again, going back to being familiar with it. Two things I would say that will help you out would be Google certifications. They help, although I will say they are not necessary, but they definitely help. If you can go through a certification and get your certification, that will be great. But if you don't, then don't worry about it, because they do not determine whether or not you get a job. It's just something nice to have walking in the door. So to sum it up, if you have a little bit of experience, it means you ran a couple of campaigns and you can really speak to what went well, what you learned from it. If you have a portfolio that includes screenshots of Excel spreadsheets or some kind of table, in particular pivot table, screenshots of some of the campaigns that you've actually ran, those things are going to go a long way. And then of course, just being more and more likable. The more likable you are, the more opportunity you're going to find yourself in, because everyone wants to work with someone who is a pleasure to be around. And like I said, even if you don't know everything, just be willing to learn. And the last thing I want to talk about is make sure that you're as well read about what's going on in the industry. There's a lot of changes that are happening, and the changes are constant. There are changes in digital marketing every month. They may even ask you about certain tools, so be familiar with certain tools. One tool that a lot of us use is SEMrush. So if you can find out a little bit about SEMrush, maybe you say something along the lines of, even though I haven't really actively used that much of SEMrush, I am a little familiar with it. Now, being familiar with something and being proficient in something are two totally different things. I could be familiar with cooking a certain kind of meal, but it doesn't mean I'm proficient in it. So keep that in mind. And one more thing I want to say before I bring this video to a close is that a lot of things in which the employer will ask for, they'll ask you for 3 years or 4 years of digital marketing experience. I'm saying to you, when you see that job posting, ignore that and still apply for it anyway, because chances are it's going to be very hard. They're going to be very hard pressed to find people that can actually do that work. So they ask for a lot of things that, quite frankly, the people in the profession really don't do themselves. Because a lot of times this this job description is written by someone in HR who has no idea about digital marketing. And so that's a really important tip, that you sort of ignore it and you apply for it anyway. Because again, what I always say in my Facebook group is that if they rock with you, they're going to give you an interview. But you have to put yourself in a position for them to see that potential in you. Also, before I end this video, please go to my Facebook group. Make sure you become a member, because there you'll find a whole lot of tips. I'm giving away a lot of free stuff in that group, because these are things I didn't necessarily know. One of the things I know, if you were to scroll all the way down, you'll see that there's a video that I shared about how to put together a pivot table. So I think that will be very, very useful for you as you move forward in trying to become a social media manager. So I hope that cleared up things on how to become a social media manager. I think with the information I shared in this video, if you apply those things, you'll become a social media manager in no time, or a media buyer, or a PPC specialist. Again, it's all the same. It's just one is more of a general term that most of the people outside of digital marketing know, and the other two terms are terms that people in digital marketing actually know about. So thank you again for taking time to watch this video. I'll see you in the next video. And again, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel, and join my Facebook group. The link to my Facebook group will be in the description below. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.